Let's start going around the room. Ahmed, coming, I talk about the great cities of the south. Let's bring in Cairo. Your thoughts. Anybody else who'd like to come in, please feel free. Just open up your camera, or give us a thumbs up, or give us a sign, or whatever. We'll bring you in. We really want to get the conversation around the table going. Samuel will bring you in, but Ahmed, let's bring you in from Cairo.
Yeah, sorry, I will have also some background. I'm in a shared office as well, so apologies for that. Yeah, Cairo is far away from being that kind of city. It's what they call it, a modern city, yes, but far away from the technology itself. It's lacking leadership. It's lacking communication. It's lacking everything. The small example is the last year we had huge fire in the central communication center in Cairo. As a result, the complete country, not only city, was down for a day. Then started partially after half a day or so to regain the communication. So a complete city and a complete country depending on one communication center without a backup. And when the crisis happened, boom, everything is down. We lost everything. Lost the communication, business, money, banks, transfers, everything. Everything was paralyzed for at least 12 hours and then start partially to return back. So resilience is not there. And this is uh, one important element that is needed in the modern cities. And I will just put one element. We have too many people around the table, so I will just give a chance to others. But this is one of the elements that we're lacking, not only in Cairo, but in most of the Middle East countries.
I don't think it's just in Middle East countries. I think all cities. We resilience is the word de nos jours of our generation. And yet, if you look at our cities, they're not resilient. They're fragile, and they're not just fragile; they're brittle. I mean, they have almost no. If you want to have resilience, you've got to have elasticity. But cities don't have elasticity. They have very narrow frameworks of operation. And you change that by a bit. You take one bridge out. You take one traffic light out. You take one motorway off ramp out. You take one runway out. We saw it in Heathrow, you take one very minor substation out, and suddenly you have these cascading consequences through the system. And you suddenly realize, and then the question is, okay, our fundamental belief is that when it goes wrong, somewhere there's somebody with a screwdriver who knows how to fix it. We still believe that in our heart of hearts. And yet, because of these systems they're transboundary, that nobody owns them, they're universal, they're in the cloud, etc. There is and organizations create complexity to avoid ownership and responsibility. I think that this idea of the city as a resilient organism doesn't really work. Nicholas Nissim Taleb famously wrote the book Black Swan. I think he got a lot wrong there, but he wrote another book called Anti-Fragile, which I think is a much better book, to be honest. But his idea of anti-fragility was how do we build in this idea not just of resilience, but avoiding those things that create those vulnerabilities. Good stuff, Ahmed. Thanks for yeah. Please come back in, Ahmed, and then we'll
Just
then
the
we'll go to
last
someone.
one quick point. It's For the last 20 years, whenever it rains in Cairo, you don't have that much rains, but whenever it rains every year in winter, whenever it rains, it's kids they don't go to school
Yeah,
because traffic get
yeah.
blocked, and nobody recognized that in the last 20 years. It's
And the
not
problem, of
obvious.
course, the problem is not rain. People think this is what flooding is not rain. Flooding is drainage. And all it takes is a few leaves to cover the drains or plastic bags or to have shopping trolleys in your pipeline. And suddenly that breaks down. So again, it is the understanding of the system that we are supposed to be managing and are not managing. Good stuff. Right, let's move on. Professor Salma Bassi. Salma, always good to see you. Looking forward to this. Come on in.
Thank you very much. I think the timing of this talk is really, it's perfect. We have London Climate Action Week. And on the opening, I gave a keynote which was focusing on climate well-being and economic resilience and building a thriving communities for sustainable future. And this afternoon, they're the women mayors of Europe meeting, again, looking at sustainability and safety. And one of the things that you've said, you've articulated beautifully, David, it's us. It really is us. It's putting human at the center. And what I've been advocating is actually a series of interconnected circles, ecosystems that are very different, but they can work together to build resilience. Because from COVID, there's so many lessons, and we could consider what happened with our food supply and our supply chains into cities from the farm. So the agriculture and food system is one. The other is entrepreneurship and local economies, growing them at the city level. So sustainability is there. Travel is not so much travel is required, and logistics and infrastructures and connectivity that are green and actually have that extra space. And the last one is technology and innovation. To dwell on what Emanuele said is the SDGs. I teach AI for SDGs, so it's really happy to meet you. One of the things that I wanted to raise is telecommunications. Maybe as a user, you all don't recognize this, but as a former Lucent chief quality officer, guess what? In New York, all the communications broke down, David, because the mother switch of AT&T was oversubscribed. People don't know this. For the return of investment, private sector pushes the revenue and the usage to a maximum. We have no idea that when emergency happens, nothing works. So there are these indicators that Emanuele mentioned. We used to call them leading indicators. Before shit happened, you had some form of warning that you're moving into an orange zone. I think that's the kind of thing we need to think about for city sustainability. I use another word, which is, as a digital transformation person, it's called transformational indicators. And the last thing I'll say, which I will follow up with an email, and I recognize I owe you as I'm looking at my notes. Sorry, Hugh and David. And that is about 7 years ago, we worked on a project with the UN ESCAP, which is the Economic Commission of UN for Asia Pacific. And again, for Emanuele, what we did was we created indicators for disaster risk reduction. And it was very important because all of the sea level rising and all of the issues that happen to the small islands in Asia Pacific. So rest assured, there are indeed indicators in that space, which I think we need to see how we can collaborate globally in this, and keep in mind that the data centers are going to add to the challenge that David raised about waters. The riots that are happening in Latin America on water, the riots that we forget happened when the data centers were built just near Heathrow, when we couldn't water our lawns. Look at this heat wave, and what is it going to do to water consumption? And the last is the right to water for human survivability instead of profiteering. Those are going to be very big challenges. Thank you.
It's really interesting to talk about indicators, because there's both those local indicators. You have that sensitivity to small signals. So those, but there's also systemic indicators. And there are 3 systemic indicators that you are moving towards a systemic breakdown of your system. The first is that the indicators of a disruption have become more frequent. And you just think about your toothache. Think about your toothache. Boof. And the indicators, doof. And then sometime later, doof. And then sometimes later, oof. And then it starts getting more frequent. Those indicators of systemic breakdown get more frequent. And we see that across our systems. The second indicator is that it gets more frequent, and then poof, it's amplitude. You suddenly go, oh my God, what was that? And it hits, and we're seeing things which, much bigger in terms of amplitude. And then the third thing is, so it's frequency, amplitude, and then time to recovery. It just takes longer and longer to come back to some sort of normalcy. And then what we do is we normalize that discrepancy, we normalize that dysfunctionality, and we recalibrate what is normal. So what was once a 100-year event now becomes a once in 20-year event, becomes normal, et cetera, et cetera. And we just completely and utterly ignore those indicators. And I think on every indicator, nobody can say we didn't see this coming. But the one thing we haven't, and I don't think we've used the word change yet, maybe somebody has. But if we look at the rate of change, what's happening is that is now becoming exponential. So it used to be that you used to break records, heat records, by 0.2 degrees. Now you're breaking them by 3 degrees, and then you're breaking them by another 2 degrees. The planet itself is moving, and I think we are not paying attention to that. We haven't paid attention to that, and we're not paying attention. Summer, allow you to come in. No, Summer, one second, Summer. Just 1 second, Summer, please. I was going to say I'll allow you to come in, but I just want to stack up everybody else.
Sure.
So
just
one
one
I'm
second.
going to stack. Hang on a second. I'm going to stack up Nishith coming in from Delhi, and then I'll stack up David Blair coming in who's been doing policy in London as well. Summer, just to stack those up. Back to you.
Anyone. Thank you so much. I mean, we're on the same frequency, and it's just lovely. I'm really excited about this conversation. All I wanted to say was the most important thing you said: systemic indicators. The other part is the integrated systemic indicators. When you look at all the valuable satellite data that is taken for climate resilience, it isn't interconnected. They're looking at it in these silos. So one of the big important things that you're doing when you look at strategic risk, they've got to be interconnected. We have to have that grouped intelligent ecosystem data that will show you that rapid change. Thank you. I won't say anything else.
That's fun. Good stuff. No, that's great stuff. I see we've got Amjad on the screen, so that's good. Nishith will bring you in from Delhi. David bring you in from London, and then Amjad will bring you in from Colombo, Sri Lanka. Nishith, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. David. And, the points that you brought out and Professor Salma just brought out about those indicators. And I can speak of a lot of cities in India which have those indicators. The indicators, the frequency has increased, the amplitude has increased. But as you said, the organizations, the people responsible are only diverting the minds of the people into different affairs. So this becomes a regular and a daily affair, and then nobody is looking into how it is affecting. The problem lies here that the people who are supposed to be planning for the next 15, 20 years, 2 decades, 3 decades, are looking only at their short-term goals, 2 years, 3 years, how much they can, how many more projects they can approve, how much, they can have those kickbacks and everything. But nobody is really thinking about the next generation, what we're going to hand them over as a legacy. And that's where the problem rises. I'll talk of Bangalore. If it rains for 15 minutes to 30 minutes, a travel time of 30 kilometers becomes 4 hours. I mean, not even a 10 kmph of your average time on a car. That sort of problem is arising, and it's a daily affair now. The frequency is almost daily. It is not that it is happening, 10 years or every year. It's every day. Rains are there every day. This happens every day. But it's become a part and parcel of life. People are accepting it. People have, been given different things to worry about rather than this. So people have sort of adapted to it, accepted it as a, destiny, and carry on. That's where the problem lies. Because in case you have one more disruptor added there, one more disruptor, it's already at the fringes. There is no elasticity left. It's already at its end of the brittleness. One more disruptor and it's chaos and havoc. And that's what is happening in a lot of cities now. They are supposedly, developed, well-to-do, high cost of living, all sorts of well-connected. But when it comes to fragility and when it comes to their resilience, I mean, they are way down in the list. So that's the problem which is not being addressed by all the urban development authorities and those people who are supposed to be doing these issues. That's the whole issue. And that's true for a lot of cities across the globe. I mean, you take any important city or any big city, it's the same issue there now.
And the issue is, and you've actually hit it, when we think of the city, we think of the tall high-rise buildings and the marble and the glass and the flyover and the interconnectedness. We don't think about the 60% of the people living under the bridge or on $3 a day, who are living on subsistence without running water. And what we've done is we've always considered those as the other, which we do not need to think about because that's not the city. The city is this. Yes. I think many of you know Sheila Patel, who's been sort of a friend of the ISRM for many years. She set up the Some Dwellers Initiative. I genuinely think Sheila, I'm now delighted to say, is on our global advisory board. I think Sheila should have won the Nobel Peace Prize 20 years ago. I genuinely do. but she has really influenced the global discussion to say those people living on $3 a day, that's your city. The other stuff is just a shiny bit, but that's your city. And I think increasingly across the world now, if you're in Washington, in New York, if you're in Washington, America, and you go 2 blocks in the wrong direction, you're in the middle of Nicaragua. I mean, I'm sorry, but that is just being so therefore the truth is don't go there. Interesting stuff. Thank you very much. David Blair Reed, good to see you. David, we'll bring you in, and then we'll bring in Amjad, and we'll continue going around the table. David.
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yep. Good.
Great. I'm David from London. Great. I've heard a lot of things about large cities, international stuff. My experience is dealing with a small part of London. It's a borough. The word inclusivity comes to mind. What our model in HACT is very simple. We have a resilience forum. That resilience forum consists of the NHS, power generators, the police, housing, transport, the water companies, adult social care. We put together a vulnerability map where the vulnerable people live in your country, in your area. Have regular meetings. Always include the police, the fire brigade. Ask these questions. Map your dependencies. What are the dependent? What do you build a bridge? What do you depend on? There's a bridge above water. Suppose the water begins to erode the pillars that support the bridge. These are all things that we must include. It's about inclusivity, destroying silos, and working together for communities. And that's what we're here for. So the main model is a borough resilience forum. We even have the Environment Agency that attends our meeting, Thames Water. And we just sit around a big table and we just discuss it. What are the vulnerabilities? Who do we need to support when things go wrong? We know climate change is happening, or what I prefer to call climate reaction, because the human beings have got involved and the climate's reacting. It's not necessarily changing for change's sake. It's for forced change. And that's our model, really. It's working together, including everyone, looking at the vulnerabilities. But the most important thing in the world, in any disaster, is communication.